A torrid affair, or more appropriately, a menage a trois, it would come to an end, bitterly. And then it would lead to a double homicide in the little small town of McCook, Nebraska. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Harold Nokes. Viewer discretion is advised. Hi, true crimerers. Real quick, I forgot to mention this. I'm filming this vertically so that you know it was done at a different time. Anyway, the video today is going to have very few photos. I have been looking literally all freaking morning. I was looking all last night. I cannot find any photos of the victims. I found one obscure photo of the suspect / possible suspects. Spoiler alert. But it's not. It's like it was a picture connected to like a book, so it's not a complete. You'll see it. But that's the only photo I could find of them during that time frame. And then after that, I only have photos of them as very old people. And then I have no photos of one of the other key players potentially involved in this. So I do apologize. You sort of stare at my face a lot in this video and whatever random photos I could find. So there you go. This happens when I pick cases at random sometimes. Very little photographic things to show you. So what is this? Anyway, back to the video. Bye. In 1973, the little town of McCook, Nebraska consisted of just under 8,000 people. It was a quiet, peaceful, serene, family-friendly town. Crime of any kind was extremely rare. But, as we all know, crime still happens anywhere, no matter how calm, peaceful, and seemingly family-friendly it is. But in McCook, basically everyone knew everyone. It had that small town vibe to it. Everyone was friendly with one another. For the most part, they got along. There was a lot of, it was a big farming community. I think it still kind of is today. But yeah, it was just like it was mainly a farming area. So a lot of big open land. But one day in 1973, the quiet and peacefulness would soon be shattered when several body parts began washing up on shore. Harold Nokes was born on April 19th, 1928 in Danbury, Nebraska. Not a whole lot is known about the guy. At the time of this story, he was 45 years old. He was working as a foreman for Nebraska's State Department of Roads. Also by this time, in 1973, he had been happily, I believe, married to his wife, Ena. And they had been married for about 27 years or so. They had gotten married in April of 1946. That's when I was in my late 60s, I believe. Yeah, fun fact about me. Harold and Ena would go on to have a few kids of their own, and then eventually they got some grandkids. Ena was born Ena Ambler, also in the Danbury, Nebraska area. Both Harold and Ena essentially were born and raised and spent their entire lives in the small community of Nebraska. By all accounts, the Nokes family seemed to be very wholesome. No scandals, nothing. Just a very friendly family that everyone knew and everyone liked. That would all change again in 1973 when body parts wrapped in paper had begun to wash up on the shores of the Harry Strunk Reservoir. There were two bodies, a man and a woman, and they would be identified as Edwin and Wilma Hoyt. Let's go back a couple of years, shall we? Somewheres around 1969 or 1970, the Nokes would meet a woman in her 20s, her name, Kay Hein. Kay was married to a man named Dwayne, and so Kay and Dwayne became friends with Harold and Ena. But then, Kay and Dwayne, they got divorced. Kay would spend more and more time with her friends, the Nokes, and they did what most friends do. They formed a threesome. They started going to Boinktown, USA as a trio. Nothing wrong with that. Harold and Ena had welcomed Kay into their bedroom, where a ménage à trois would be produced. It would go on for about 2 or 3 years. That's pretty lengthy. But I guess this relationship, or whatever you want to call it, well, it would hit a rocky patch. There would be turmoil. There would be some tension. There would be fighting amongst the three. Emotions ran rampant, and Kay, apparently, during one of the sexual escapades, got herself a concussion. I don't know what you guys are doing. Maybe, I guess the headboard was a rocket a little too hard. So there was infighting, basically. And Kay decided that, you know what, maybe it's time to call this off. Maybe this is just not it anymore. And Kay alleges that from that point on, Harold Nokes began to blackmail her, threatened to expose her as a sexual deviant. The works. Kay allegedly tried to take her own life from this. Thankfully, it failed. When she attempted that, and I don't know the circumstances of all of this and like how it came to be, but this is when Kay's parents would enter the picture. And this is all happening, by the way, in the summer of 1973. Kay's parents were Edwin and Wilma Hoyt. Edwin Hoyt was born on January 18th, 1918. And he lived his entire life in McCook, Nebraska. At some point down the road, he would meet Wilma, who also lived her entire life in Nebraska, and she was born in 1916. They would go on to have at least 2 kids that I'm aware of. I know that obviously they had Kay, and then Kay had a sister. I don't know if they had more kids. Usually their obituaries will say like how many kids they have, but theirs are relatively blank when it comes to info on them. There is very little information in general on this case. I'm using basically court documents, and so they don't always give you like the background, and it's kind of hard to find on these folks. So I apologize for that. Edwin and Wilma, though, were a very peaceful couple. Their family was also well regarded in the community. They appeared to be a staple of McCook, and just no one could really say anything bad about him. With regards to Kay, and I cannot confirm this with absolute certainty, but there was a book written about this case. The book is called In Cold Storage. In what I was able to sort of read kind of based on this book, no, I have not read the book. I can't read books on every true crime case I covered, or else I'll never be able to tell stories. At any rate, the author allegedly had interviewed Kay's sister. Kay's sister had described Kay as being someone who is extremely manipulative. It sounds like Kay had very erratic behavior, I guess you can call it. There were people who thought she may have had something like bipolar disorder. Again, not confirmed. This is really just more rumors and speculation. But it's information that was written in this book. It sounds like she didn't always get along with her parents, but I don't know if that was anything super crazy that would lead her to want to do anything or do them any harm. I don't know. The court documents don't mention anything about their relationship. Kay would claim that Harold's behavior after the ménage à trois ended, that he had become very cuckoo, if you will. He was like putting sugar in her gas tank. He was poisoning her lawn so that the lawn would die. He was, again, going around writing like graffiti on bathroom walls about Kay being this sexual deviant, and he apparently was blackmailing her. It just sounds like when this ended, it became a hot, ugly mess. So when Kay tried taking her own life, and in whatever circumstances led to Kay's parents meeting Harold and Ena, Wilma and Edwin, they just wanted to talk to the couple because they wanted to get to the bottom of this. They wanted to know what was going on. Which brings us to Sunday, September 23rd, 1973. Harold and Ena, that night around 8 p.m., decided to leave their home and drive to the Hoyt house to have a discussion with them about what was going on. They wanted to have the misunderstandings straightened out. Harold decided to take a revolver with him. For what reason? It's unknown, but he brought it with him. He had actually just recently purchased that gun. They arrived at the Hoyt house at approximately 8:30 p.m. that night. Then they spoke for a short amount of time, I guess. What was said in that conversation has not been said out loud, so no one really knows. But this is where, for me, I get kind of confused. But Harold and Ena had told the Hoyts, hey, why don't you guys now come back to our house so we can further the conversation, and we'll have Kay meet us there. I don't know why they needed to move houses, but the Hoyts agreed. And so Harold and the Hoyt couple got into one vehicle together while Ena drove the other vehicle, theirs, to the Nokes house. Shortly after arriving at the Nokes house, apparently Kay had not gotten there yet, but allegedly, this is according to Harold at this point, Edwin became angry at the Nokes couple for the situation in general with regards to their daughter. Now, because of the time of night, Harold says he told Edwin and Wilma, hey, let's go down to my basement because I don't want to, disturb the neighbors if we're going to be yelling, right? So the four of them go down to the basement, and in the basement is like a little bathroom in the corner. So Harold and Edwin go to that bathroom area while the two ladies sit on a couch that's down in the basement. Apparently, there was an argument that broke out between the two men, again, over the issue. When, according to Harold, because we can't question Edwin anymore, Edwin allegedly said, I can't take this shit anymore. He took off his glasses, and then he began to put his fist up as if he was going to punch Harold. Harold had his revolver tucked in his pants. When he says when he saw the fist come up, he took the revolver out and shot Edwin. And Edwin collapsed to the ground immediately, and he was dead. They were within 3 feet of one another. Then Wilma, obviously hearing the altercation and the gunshot, she runs and sees what happens. And I don't know why she screams this. And again, this is only according to Harold. But Wilma screams, why didn't you kill Kay? I don't know why she said that. If she even did, that's what Harold said. And then she began to try to run out of the basement. She goes to the stairs. Harold thinks to himself quickly, well, she's seen what I just done, so now I have to kill her. So he kind of chases her towards the stairs, and as she's only a couple stairs up, he fires the gun at her, and she basically falls and then ends up going backwards, and she falls to the ground dead as well. This is then when Harold and Ena, now they're like, well, shit, what do we do with it? What do we do now? What do we do with the bodies? Uh-oh. According to Harold, he and Ena took basic kitchen knives and they began to slowly dismember both of the bodies. They would take their pieces, their body part pieces, wrap them in like paper that you would wrap like meat up with, right, at a butcher shop. And then they stored all the body parts in their freezer which is why the book about this thing is called In Cold Storage. They named it after this aspect. They then took the Hoyt's vehicle and they parked it somewhere just away from them, their house, so that way there wasn't any like evidence that the Hoyts were even at their property. This took them basically, I mean, just the entire night. And by the way, Kay, she apparently never got there. That's unclear. It's unclear if Kay ever was at the house. So I don't know where she was. The next day, both Harold and Ena just went to their jobs like nothing had happened. And then after work, Harold took the clothing that they had both been wearing that night. They also had removed the clothing off of both of Edwin and Wilma, and they burned all of the clothing and anything that may have had blood on it in general, and they just threw it into a fire and burnt it all up. Then, that night, they took all of the body parts out of the freezer and loaded them up into their truck. And then they drove to the Harry Strunk Reservoir. For some reason, I was having a really hard time saying that. I guess it's also referred to as Cambridge Lake. They had a boat as well that they had brought along with them. They loaded all the body parts now into the boat, and then they went out onto the water. They then had begun to unwrap the body parts and throw them into the lake, but then they just stopped unwrapping them and just threw them in there with the paper and everything. They kind of tried to scatter them sort of just around in different places. They then started a fire near the lake, and whatever wrappings they kept that they took off, they then burned all of those, and then burned the clothing they were wearing to dispose of the body parts. Apparently, a few days later, Harold had gone back down to the lake to kind of look around the area to check, and he said a couple of the body parts had floated up to the shore, and they were still there. So he took some like large rocks and basically tied them up to the parts, and so that they would sink to the bottom. Edwin and Wilma Hoyt would be reported missing by their family members, friends, and co-workers. And the investigation into their disappearance didn't initially yield much results. But then there were more body parts that began to wash up on the shores of the lake/reservoir. And this time Harold hadn't been able to hide them again. They found enough parts to determine that there were two people, at least, and they were later then identified as that of Wilma and Edwin Hoyt. When the body parts were found, this is apparently when Kay came forward to police to suggest that their killers may have been at least Harold Nokes, maybe Ena. She then divulged the information about the affair, and she gave them all the dirty secrets, the police. On December 20th, 1973, after a brief investigation into Harold and Ena, based on information they got from Kay, Harold Nokes was arrested, brought into a interrogation room, and he was questioned. At first, he wouldn't admit to anything, didn't say anything, nothing. But he would finally, cave in a short time later. On January 4th, 1974, Harold would finally confess. And everything I had just told you about what happened that night was the account of what Harold had initially told police on that January 4th. He would go on to plead guilty. He had been charged with first-degree murder, and this would, I guess, at some point down the road became a very heated discussion during, his appeals. But first of all, he pleaded guilty to the murders, and he ended up getting 2 life sentences. So down the road, he would appeal, stating that the first-degree murder, because he was convicted of one first-degree murder, and then the other was second-degree murder. The reason why he would appeal, and it would have been fruitless anyway, but I guess it was more of the principle of the matter, is that the first-degree murder charge to him and his lawyers meant that Harold had planned this ahead of time, because usually first-degree murder is something that they can prove was planned, premeditated. Where second-degree murder is something that is like you knowingly and intentionally committed murder, but it wasn't necessarily planned. So they're basically trying to argue like semantics at this point, because he's not getting at, regardless if the first-degree murder sentence was like changed to second-degree murder, he would still be in prison for life without parole. They wanted to say that, well, he didn't plan this. This was a spur of the moment, in the heat of the argument kind of thing. My issue, as well as like the prosecution, is you could reasonably determine that this was planned because Harold had brought a gun with him when they went to the Hoyt house. That does suggest that he may have intended to possibly use it. And then he got them to go to their house and then brought them down to the basement where it was quieter. That all implies, or can at least be looked at as this was planned. And even if you want to say, okay, he killed Edwin out of just pure reaction, okay. But the other one, Wilma, he even said, well, she's seen what I've done, so now I have to kill her. It happens quickly. Premeditation doesn't mean you planned it for 3 months or 3 days. It could mean that you literally planned to kill her for the purpose of hiding your previous crime. That's considered premeditation. So nothing was ever reversed. His charges stayed. In terms of Ena, she was sentenced to just 5 years in prison for wrongful disposal of human remains. She only served a couple of years and was released, and then she spent the rest of her life living a totally normal life. Again, where was Kay in all of this? Still unknown. She was the one to give police the information about Harold, which would eventually lead to the arrest and the charges and all that. The author that I mentioned who wrote the book on this case, he had done a lot of investigation into this. He did a lot of research into this. He spoke to the people of the area of the time. He did a lot of legwork into it. There are rumblings and rumors that Kay may have actually been way more involved in this than ever initially even thought of. That given her manipulative behavior, her mental health issues, she somehow may have orchestrated this. But there is no proof. Zero proof. No physical evidence. There really isn't even any circumstantial evidence, no witness statements to state that she ever had involvement in this. All it really is just gut feelings and speculation. That's it. But you can't use that in the court of law. You have to have proof. We can't just guess and say things and boom, it's true. You're convicted of a crime because we just thought you may have done something. But then I think to myself, what was Harold's motive in all of this? If this was premeditated, which it looks like it was, why? Why would Harold want to premeditate the murders of Kay's parents, people he really had never truly met before? The only person who could have had a foreseeable motive would have been Kay, because she had a rocky history with her parents, and just because of her kind of unstable behavior. But she also didn't get anything from it. There was from what I can tell, there was no insurance money. So again, all speculative. There's no proof. But I'm lost on what the motive would be if this was premeditated. This is just very bizarre, because it has all of the elements to prove a premeditated murder, but it also has a lot of elements to show that this was a spur of the moment, heat of the moment killing. I mean, don't get me wrong, Harold deserved to be in prison for 2 life sentences because he did murder 2 people, and one of them for sure we know he did with intent and purpose. But like I said, the only reason I'm going on about this is because if this was planned, that suggests that someone else may have been involved in this, and that someone else basically got away with it. But I don't know. It's weird to me. This is just a weird one to me. Harold was interviewed in prison many years later, sometime when he was like in his mid-80s. And this was by the author of that book. Harold made changes to his story. He basically told the author that he wasn't really as involved in this supposed 3-way. As a matter of fact, there wasn't even 3-way. His wife wasn't even involved. Never. His wife never participated. Okay? Even though initially, back in the 1973, he did say she did, and Kay said she did. He even said in this interview that Ena had nothing to do with disposing of the body, she had nothing to do with cutting up the body, even though back then he said she participated in it. He then told the author, you know what, after the 2 murders, I just completely blacked out. But I can tell you with certainty that Ena had no involvement. But I blacked out. So which is it? Did he change his story to protect Ena? Was Ena more involved in this than initially thought? We'll never know. We will never know. Ena died in April of 2021 at the age of 91. She lived the rest of her life as a well-beloved and loving mother, grandmother, and just had a totally normal life. Harold died in prison of natural causes in 2017. So the truth of what happened that night, exactly the truth, and if anyone else was involved, will probably never be known. But what we do know is that the person who pulled the trigger and committed the murders was convicted and spent the rest of their life in prison. And those are the facts, and that's what we have to go off of, is facts, things that can be proven. It all just seemed so completely senseless and just good old-fashioned stupid. Because it sounds like the Hoyts were really just wanting to protect their daughter. And that's essentially what they died doing, trying to protect their daughter and just make sure that their daughter was going to be okay. But that is it for this case. I hope you found it interesting. As usual, if you have tripped, fallen, stumbled, and premeditated your way into this video for the first time, hi, I'm Mike. I tell true crime stories, obviously. I tell 4 of them a week here on the YouTubles. I tell 1 on Instagram, 1 on Facebook, and a couple here and there on TikTok. All of the links to my socials are below in the link tree and in the description of this video. So please feel free to follow me everywhere, and please subscribe here and like the video. Next, if you have any cases you would like to see me cover, go ahead and email me. That information is also below. But first, go to my case list. It's in the link tree. It's Crimerer case list. There's about 4,500 plus names on there. Scroll through it, search through it, whatever you got to do, and look for the name. If you do not see that name, then email it to me. Just the name, where it happened, when it happened, and eventually, I promise, I will add it to my list. I may not respond to your emails these days, just because sometimes it gets time consuming and all that. So I apologize, but I do add the names to my list once I see them. If you see the name already on there, please don't email it to me. It's already there. I pick my cases as random as I possibly can to cover, so it will be covered eventually. I just don't know when. Nextly, I sell merch. If you want to purchase like t-shirts or hoodies or a wine glass or other things like that, in the link tree below as well. We do ship internationally. It's all made by my wonderful, amazing friend Adam. He does it all himself, so that's the best way to support me. And then if you have a Discord account, you want to join my Discord server. It's a very quiet, chill server, and we like to keep it that way. That's also linked in the link tree. Please be over the age of 18 or else you'll be kicked out. Swift kick in the butt, right out of there. But that is it for this video. True crime. Rooney dooney 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 ding dong. The witch is dead. Ding dong. The witch is dead. I need to reset. The battery's dead. Well, I flooded it. Where my body is dying. My body's dying. I can't fix it. I can't do anything about it. So therefore, look, words. Hi, I'm awkward. I don't know how to say goodbye. I think it's glip glop badoop boop is how you say it. No, glip glop. Hi. What's this? Oh, it's a microphone. I don't know how to... I need to stop the video. Okay, well, technology is not my thing. Just trying to end the video to spare the awkwardness. Well, I guess we're staying here together, huh? Hunker down, baby. I'll wait till the battery runs out. Battery's gonna run out. Oh god, it's fully charged. Oh shit, okay.